We're going to go ahead and get started. Everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Well, good afternoon. First of all, I want to preface my comments here today by saying that anytime we have a death in our community, we all mourn. And my deepest sympathies on behalf of the Sheriff's Office go out to the Hill family during this difficult time. Now to the event itself. Yesterday afternoon at approximately 3:15, deputies responded to 1501 Avenue Q in response to an obscene, loud music call. The call was from a parent sitting in the student pickup line of Francis K. Sweet Elementary School waiting to pick up her child. The caller stated the music was coming from a residence across the street from the school with the garage door open and big speakers blasting, I quote, "FU music so all the kids can hear it." Now, this was during a time in which students were being released from school, parents were already in the pickup line, and students were exiting the school and getting into the cars. 2 uniformed deputies were dispatched to the residence and immediately heard the loud music playing coming from the now closed garage door. The deputies knocked on the front door but got no response. They then knocked on the garage door and the door opened. As the garage door opened, they saw a black male holding a handgun at his right side. Deputies ordered the male to drop the gun, and instead of complying with the deputies' commands, the male raised the gun toward the deputies as he simultaneously pulled the garage door down. Fearing for their lives, one of the deputies fired his handgun multiple times at the subject. The bullets penetrated the garage door and, as we now know, struck the subject. However, at the time, neither deputy knew for sure if the subject was struck, so a perimeter was immediately established and the SWAT and crisis negotiations team were called. Early information received also indicated there was a possible mentally handicapped child inside the residence with the subject. We were eventually able to locate the child, who was at another location. We also received information from a man claiming to be the subject's uncle. This man told investigators he had spoken with the subject on the phone during the event and that he was alive and uninjured but afraid to come out. Throughout this event, attempts were made to establish communication with the individual by telephone and with a loudspeaker, but no contact was made. The SWAT team then deployed chemical agents into the residence. After still receiving no response, a remote-controlled camera was inserted through a garage door, and we were able to see a male lying on the garage floor just inside the garage door. The SWAT team quickly entered the residence, where the male was found deceased, caused by multiple gunshot wounds. This entire event, from start to finish, lasted less than 4 hours. We have identified the subject as 30-year-old Gregory Vaughn Hill Jr. of Fort Pierce. His criminal history shows multiple arrests, including drugs, thefts, driving-related offenses, obstruction of justice, and disorderly conduct charges. Mr. Hill was also currently on probation for cocaine possession. The deputies involved in this incident are Deputy Christopher Newman and Deputy Edward Lopez. Deputy Newman has been employed by the Sheriff's Office since October of 2013. His previous law enforcement experience includes 4 years as a law enforcement officer with the State of Florida Department of Business Professional Regulation, the Division of Alcohol, Beverage, and Tobacco, and 10 years as a police officer with the City of Fort Pierce. He has no discipline in his personnel file. Deputy Lopez has been employed by the Sheriff's Office since May of 2004. He began his career here as a detention deputy and in September of 2009 transferred to the Patrol Division. The only discipline in Deputy Lopez's file is a reprimand for failing to report for an off-duty detail. As is customary with officer-involved shootings, both of these deputies are on paid administrative leave while a thorough investigation is being done. That investigation includes assistance from the State Attorney's Office as well as the Regional Medical Examiner's Office. An autopsy is being performed tomorrow. This was a tragedy, and although this investigation is in its early stages, I submit to everybody this investigation will be an open book. As more facts become available during this investigation, we will share them with our community and the Hill family. I would also like to ask anyone who may have witnessed this event to please contact our Criminal Investigations Division at 462-3230. Repeating that number, 462-3230. And like many of you, I was at the scene last night and again this morning. There are a lot of community members that came to the scene and voiced their criticism of what happened. They had numerous rumors flying among them, and I would ask that the community just stay calm. We're still investigating this. We're working through every possible piece of evidence that we've encountered to prove or disprove what happened, but these are the facts as we know it right now, and I'm here for any questions that you might have.
Sheriff, did Mr. Vaughn say anything before he brandished the gun and shut the garage door?
Mr. Vaughn did not shoot the garage door. Our deputy shot the garage door.
Sorry.
Mr. Vaughn did not say anything. There was no interaction. Mr. Hill, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Hill did not have any interaction with the deputy on a vocal sense.
Sheriff, did you say which deputy fired, or did both deputies fire?
We're not going to say which deputy fired at this time.
Sure, what kind of gun did Mr. Hill have?
He had it was a semi-automatic, 9mm, but I forget the make.
Did he fire?
We do not know.
And you wouldn't know because
We're still investigating. I mean, we just got the gun to the ballistics, and we have the deputies' guns going to the crime lab, so there's still a lot of investigation to be done here.
But it was a real gun. This is not a mistaken
This
case.
is a real gun, correct.
Do we know how many shots were fired?
We don't want to speculate on that right now.
What's the nature of the garage? Is it an automatic that opens up with a button, or is it?
No, it's manual. And you all probably looked into the garage during parts of the investigation last night or this morning. He had stereo speakers in there. He had weightlifting equipment in there. It appears he had some furniture, rudimentary as it was, some furniture within the garage. So this might have been a place where he spent a lot of time in his garage.
So Sheriff, it was a manual garage door, so he had to get the garage door down and the bullets went through the door manually? I'm trying to picture.
Yeah, he had the gun in the right hand. He reached up with his left hand and pulled the garage door down.
How old is Mr. Hill? I didn't.
30 years old.
30.
And only because I wasn't completely clear, were you able to make contact with him at any time, or no, since that garage door shut?
We did not make contact with him. And, you know, we had family members come up and say they made contact with him. Even though we were desperately attempting to make contact with him, no one could concretely give us the information that they had after making contact with him, other than to say he was in there, he was alive, and was scared to come out.
Did the deputy say if the music was still playing when Mr. Hill went to open the garage door?
It was still playing.
But
And- Go ahead.
if he was speaking with family members and he's saying he's in there bleeding or whatnot, how do you make that determination with law enforcement as to can you go in and get him without being harmed or?
Well, last night, one of the things that I said was time was on our side, because the family members said he is alive, we've talked to him, and our concern was for the welfare of not only Mr. Hill, but the 8-year-old that was subject to be in there.
If he would have surrendered at that point, I mean, does it appear from his injuries that he may have survived if he had cooperated?
We don't know that. The autopsy will be done tomorrow, and we'll have more of those facts available after tomorrow.
So you can't say where he was hit, or with how many?
No,
bullets at
we
this
can't.
point. Where was his body found in relation to the entryway to the garage door that he was closing? He was still in the garage?
As soon as you entered the garage, he was right there on the right behind the garage door.
And the criticisms from the public, you know, what are you being told and what is your response to that? What would you like the public to know?
One of the criticisms last night was any homeowner can have a gun in their home. That is true. However, when law enforcement arrives at your home doing a lawful duty and you're confronted with law enforcement and they give you an order to drop that gun, the last thing anyone should do is raise that gun toward the deputies. And in this case, Mr. Hill decided to raise his gun toward the deputies, did not obey any of their demands, and he was subsequently shot.
And when you say raising the gun, it was from your understanding now, it was a deliberate act, not just his weight carrying him as he was raising the other arm to pull down the garage door.
You know what? I don't have a conclusion as if it was his weight or was a deliberate action. All I know is the deputy on scene reported that gun came to my direction, and these deputies are trained not to take a bullet, to respond to a bullet. When they fear for their lives, they respond, and that was the response.
And that's a very real threat here.
That is a very real threat. Anytime someone points a gun at you, that is a real threat.
Based on the comments you received from the relatives who said they were able to reach him on the phone, how long do you believe Mr. Hill was alive beyond the...
We don't know that. We'll know that maybe better after tomorrow's autopsy. But a couple things that delayed our response to get into that home was, first of all, the family told us there was an 8-year-old mentally handicapped child in the home, which our thoughts were to make sure she was safe in every way. And secondly, we had family members allegedly tell us that they were making contact with him in the home. He was alive, he was well, but he was scared to come out. So as I said last night, there was no rush for us to enter the home.
What was the timetable between the family members telling you that he was okay and the initial encounter with the deputies? Like, was it an hour later that, 2 hours later that the family
I would
was
say almost
saying-
2 hours later. We were there with the SWAT team, and family members were coming up saying, we've talked to him on the phone, he's alive, he's just scared to come out.
And so that was
So there was a big delay in our response into the home.
Because what is the threat if he's alive?
That's correct. What is the threat if he's alive? What is the threat? Is the 8-year-old girl's fine? There's no urgency on our part.
Sure, did you find a gun on him, do you know? I mean, not a gun, a phone on him?
No, I don't think so. No.
Whereabouts were the deputies standing when the actual shots took place? I just noticed, looking at the angle of the bullets on the garage door, it didn't seem to be like they were anything straight on or anything.
We don't want to divulge that right now. Yeah, we're going to hold on to that till we confirm everything about the investigation.
To clarify the previous question about whether a gun was found, was a gun found in the garage, but just not on his person?
Gun was found on his person.
Oh, it was found on his person.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell whether it had been fired?
I don't think we looked at it that good. We collected it for evidence, and that's one of the things that will be going to the crime lab.
And is it, from yesterday again, there was one deputy who was at the garage and the other deputy was at the front door?
Correct.
Okay, and the deputy who was at the garage, when he encountered Mr. Hill, it said deputy sheriff, and that's when there was,
Well, as the garage door came up, the deputy at the front door realized that now they had some type of
Somebody was
interaction
there.
at the garage. He started toward the garage, and that's where they both noticed that this subject was armed.
And Sheriff, just to make it extremely clear, what is the law and discretion for deputies regarding when someone has a handgun on them and threatens harm, as far as what the deputies are taught here?
They're taught as if their life is in danger, they could use deadly force to counter that danger. And that's exactly what they did.
Besides the deputies, were there any witnesses to the shooting?
We're looking for any witnesses. We have some that said they were witnesses, but they were not witnesses. They're making allegations. If anybody out there witnessed this event, we're asking them to call our criminal investigation division, and I shared that number with you, and I'll do it again. The number's 462-3230. 462-3230.
School was getting out.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Any shells, spent shells found on the school campus?
No.
Any indication how long the music played after the gunfire?
I think the deputies cut it off immediately. No, after the gunfire, well, who turned it off?
It was on CD.
Oh,
Had you gone there before to warn him about loud music?
we had,
There were calls,
there were calls there for loud music?
not for loud music.
Other calls. Those are one of the things we'll be tracking down, Shannon. All the previous calls there, the history of those calls.
How about Tuesday afternoon? Were there any other calls besides the school for that loud music that afternoon?
No, just that one call.
And it was one call from a parent, in-parent pickup?
Correct.
Okay. And did a school resource officer respond, or no, that's out of their jurisdiction, and so? it was a-
I don't think we have a school resource deputy there. So. Sound good?
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, thank you all.